Welcome to Spirit of Light Virtual Church, where we reach the unreachable. Looking to further your education in the Word of God? Spirit of the Light Church is offering a $2,000 scholarship to the most compelling application. To apply, the details will be available on the next slide and on our website. If you wish to contact us here at Spirit of the Light Virtual Church, you can reach us on our Facebook page, Spirit of the Light, or you can reach us via email or our website, or you can reach us by phone and our address. We'd be more than happy to take your prayer requests or any questions that you may have. Please feel free to contact us. Thank you again for attending Spirit of Light Virtual Church. For more content, please feel free to join our YouTube channel, like and subscribe our videos there, or on Sunday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, please come and join us for our live Bible study via Zoom. Once again, thank you for your attendance and have a blessed day.
He's not the author of confusion. Oh no, he's not the greater that is declared. Oh no, when the tempest isn't raining, oh, when the billows in your life seem to roll.
Welcome everybody on Facebook and on YouTube. Welcome to our weekly Christianity 101 Beginner's Bible Study class. We have a special guest this evening as my dad. Willie McQuarrie is on the Zoom meeting with us. So we are continuing with the Old Testament. We're studying the Bible right now, and we started with the Old Testament. We said the Old Testament is split into 5 parts, 5 sections: the law, historical books, poetry and wisdom, major prophets and minor prophets, and we're on the minor prophets right now. And we should be finishing this up today. And then we'll be moving on to the New Testament next week. These are the books of the minor prophet, and you see the last 3 are highlighted. These are the 3 that we will discuss today: Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi. So starting with the book of Haggai. Going back to our trusty chart here, we have all of the historical books, and then there in the light gray, the dark gray are the books of the major prophets, and then the green are the books of the minor prophets. The green with the white lettering are the minor prophets whose events took place before the fall of Israel, which are the beginning books of the section of the minor prophets. The 3 with the blue lettering are the 3 books that are after the ones that are in white, and they cover a period of time after the fall of Israel, but before the fall of Judah, which includes Jerusalem. These last three books, including the one we're going to talk about now, the book of Haggai, happens after the people of Israel were released by Babylon and was allowed to return to Jerusalem.
You mean the people of Judea, right?
People of Judea, Israel, all the Jews, which were the Jews from Judea or Judah, these words can be used interchangeably, that were captured and taken into Babylon were allowed to return home. So Haggai is prophesying to these Jews after they were allowed to return to their home. So, as far as Haggai's background, the Bible and no other historical books really comment on know what Haggai's background is. And as we already said, Haggai was a prophet to the New Jerusalem after the Persians, who conquered Babylon, allowed the Jews to return to the city. And not only did the Persians allow them to return, they funded the rebuilding of Jerusalem. Now, Haggai was God's messenger to Zerubbabel, Joshua, the high priest, and to the rest of Jerusalem as well. His words were communicated to the body in 520 BC, which was the second year of King Darius's reign. And this is me, not the Bible, deduce that the word that Haggai has is coming directly from God, because he uses the phrase, saith Jehovah, and saith Jehovah of hosts, or the Jehovah of the people, multiple times. And that is where he got the word. There's no mention of any angels or night visions or anything like that. Haggai just says he received the word from God. Or he was saying it came from God. Now, on the Jews' return, everything was not smooth. Samaria became the kingdom, the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, when the total body of Israel separated. Now, after their demise by the Assyrians, some Jews stayed, and they were assimilated into the Assyrian culture. Now, the returning Jews had a conflict with them based on the fact that they felt that they were not true Jews, but they were tainted by the Assyrians' culture. So they felt that they were tainted, and then the Sumerian Jews didn't like the other Jews because the Persians favored them. So there was some conflict between those two Jewish factions. And the surrounding areas, Ammon, Gilead, and Arabia, and Idumea, supported the Sumerians' efforts to try to prevent the rebuilding of the temple during Haggai's prophecy period. And there were also friction with the southern Jews, or the Jews from originally Judah, that were not taken into Babylon, because they felt they were God's people in the remnant of God, and they resented the returning Jews and the status that they held. So although all these people were once one nation, because of their separation and their assimilation into other cultures and then remixing them back, there were conflicts amongst them which troubled the temple being rebuilt. And the major project that they were to undertake when they returned, was rebuilding the temple. So both all of the information above and the realization that the new temple was not going to measure up to the majesty of the original temple stifles the nation's morale. So the rebuilding of the temple was progressing extremely slow. So Haggai's role was to prophesy, to encourage God's indwelling in the people through the success of the temple and the restoration of God's people. The first part of Haggai's book focuses on the rebuilding of the temple, and the second part focuses on the cleansing and the restoration of the Jewish kingdom as a whole. So through God's inspired word, Haggai instructed the Jews to build the temple for the pleasure and the glory of God, which you can find in verse 1 and 8. And he encouraged them not to fear, but to be strong in work and to dedicate themselves to the work of the Lord. And I want to get this one detail right because I did not include it. Yes. From the beginning of the temple to Haggai's involvement, I believe was 16 years. So after 16 years, the temple was not done, and God worked through Haggai and Zechariah as well, which is our next book, to encourage the Jews to finish the rebuilding of God's temple. So all of the challenges that they were facing is what Haggai told them was because of God's chastisement, but the completion of the temple will bring God pleasure and glory. They will be successful, and he will reward their efforts by glorifying the temple, granting them peace and blessing. Haggai concludes his book with this verse: "On that day, declares the Lord Almighty, I will take you, my servant Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, declares the Lord, and I will make you like my signet ring, for I have chosen you, declares the Lord Almighty." Now, Zerubbabel is the descendant of Jehoiachin, who was the king of Judah and was deported to Babylon. Now, they're from the line of David. He was the first king to unite the northern and southern kings, northern and southern kingdoms. And it was also prophesied that Jesus Christ will come through the line of David. So what God was prophesied in that last line was that he was restoring the Jews under the lineage of David through through Zerubbabel, who was the governor of the territory at this time. The signet ring is a sign of authority, honor, or ownership. All the official documents of their time were sealed with the rings. Now, the Jews were now sealed with David and Jesus as his heir. So the last verse in the book of Haggai points towards Jesus Christ. God had been faithful to his people, and he also fulfilled the early prophecies regarding their restoration. Now, this moves us to the book of Zechariah. Now, we see the book of Haggai, which was 520 BC. Well, the book of Zechariah starts at the same time frame and went through approximately 480 BC. That end date is not definite, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Now, Zechariah is a contemporary of Haggai. They were both prophesying to the remnant of Israel at the same time. And Zechariah was also a priest as well as a prophet. Zechariah's name means Yahweh remembers. He is the grandson of Iddo, who was a prophet during the reigns of Solomon, Rehoboam, and Asa. Rehoboam is the king that was the first king of Judah after Israel and Judah split off to be two.
And he was, if I'm correct, born a slave, not of the line of David.
Force.
Rehoboam. Rehoboam.
Yes, you are correct. Now, Haggai and Zechariah were prophets at the same time, but Haggai's focus was on the rebuilding of the temple and the reinstitution of the sacrificial system, where Zechariah's focus was more on the people's spiritual transformation. And this comes from his background as a priest. He was more concerned with the people in their relationship with God. The Hebrew word used by the writer regarding Zechariah's prophecy is Ra, which means to see with his eyes. So his accounts of what he told Jerusalem were the visions of what God showed him that he saw with his eyes, and they were interpreted by angels. Zechariah did not have dreams. These weren't dreams. Zechariah was actually awake when he saw these visions from God, and that was how God communicated to him. Now, the first 8 chapters was written during the temple rebuilding, and the final 6 were written after its completion. Now, it is debated by the theologians whether the last 6 chapters were actually written by Zechariah or they were written by someone else. It is traditionally attributed to Zechariah, and there's some timeline events that points to a time frame of around 480 BC when these final 6 chapters were actually written. Now, the themes of the visions in the first section are God's judgment of the nations, both Israel and the other nations that brought conflict towards them. It also focused on God's election of who is his people and what the future blessing for Jerusalem was. The purification of the land, the rebuilding of the temple, and the leadership of Zerubbabel and Joshua. Zerubbabel was the governor, and Joshua was the high priest. Now, the second section pertains 2 messages that deal with the establishment of God's kingdom on earth, and they contain future events. And they also dealt with Christ's first and his second yet to come coming. The overview of the book of Zechariah is that God was displeased with how Israel had abandoned him in the past. And if Israel would return to him, he will remove his retribution against them, and they will retain or really regain his blessings. God will judge the nations that oppress them, but that even a remnant of these nations will become his worshipers. And as he has preserved the remnant of Israel and cleansed them, so the Lord will send the Messiah to provide by his death permanent forgiveness and peace and the total eradication of evil. This is from the book by E. Ray Clendenden, the minor prophets, which is part of the Holman Concise Bible commentary. Then lastly, we get to the last book of the minor prophets, which is Malachi. Malachi is even from a later period in the book of Haggai, in the book of Zechariah. I believe it's 430 BC. So the temple was already completed by this time. Malachi prophesied about the completion of the temple and is the last recorded prophet before the intertestamental period of 400 years when God was silent. Now we're going to pick up on the New Testament next week, and we will jump from Malachi to when Jesus Christ is born. The intertestamental period is a 400-year period when God separated himself from the world and he did not communicate with anybody. What happened in these 400 years are not documented in the Bible itself, but there are other apocryphal books, which are books that were not accepted into the Bible, and other historical books that record what happened during these 400 years, but you will not find anything in the Bible itself that covers the events of these 400 years before Jesus Christ was born. And Malachi is like Haggai. There's no other information in the Bible that would identify who he was related to or where he came from. The book was written in a period after the completion of the temple, but the details point to a period of time before Alexander the Great conquered Persia in 332 BC. So God's word was that the priesthood was failing to fear him and to serve the people conscientiously, and this led the people to become indifferent towards God. Judah or Judea blamed their social and economic distress on the Lord being unfaithful to them, which led them to be faithless to each other, profaning the temple and marrying pagan women, and also the people quit tithing during this period of time as well. Malachi warned that if the priests do not change their behavior, the Lord will curse them and remove them from service. Then he also spoke of a day when the Lord of justice will come to purge and refine his people. And I want to close out Malachi with some verses from the text, because Malachi is the last book before the New Testament, and Malachi does prophesy about the coming of Jesus Christ. Well, let's pick up at Malachi chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. God told Malachi, I will send my messenger who will prepare the way before me. And suddenly the Lord you are seeking will come to his temple. The messenger of the covenant whom you desire will come, says the Lord Almighty. Who can endure the day of his coming? Who can stand when he appears? For he will be like a refiner's fire or a lumberer's soap. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. He will purify the Levites and refine them like gold and silver. Then the Lord will have men who will bring offerings in righteousness. And the offerings of Judah and Jerusalem will be acceptable to the Lord as in days come by, as in former years. So I will come to put you on trial. I will be quick to testify against sorcerers, adulterers, and perjurers, against those who defraud laborers of their wages, who oppress the widows and the fatherless, and deprive the foreigners among you of justice, but do not fear me. The first messenger he talks about is actually John the Baptist, because John comes to prepare the way. And he is preparing the way for the messenger of the covenant, who is Jesus Christ. We have 3:14 through 18. you have said, what's the use of serving God? Because remember, the people at this time were frustrated with God because they felt like God had abandoned them. So they asked the question, why should we serve God? He's not helping us. What have we gained by obeying his commands or by trying to show the Lord of heaven's armies that we are sorry for our sins? From now on, we will call the arrogant blessed. For those who do evil get rich, and those who dare God to punish them suffer no harm. Then those who feared the Lord spoke with each other, and the Lord listened to what they said. In his presence, a scroll of remembrance was written to record the names of those who feared him and always thought about the honor of his name. And God said, they will be my people, says the Lord of heaven's armies. On the day when I act in judgment, they will be my own special treasure. I will spare them as a father spares an obedient child. Then you will again see the difference between the righteous and the wicked, between those who serve God and those who do not. So this was a message to the people of Judea at this time. Hey, if you don't want to obey me, if you don't think I'm there for you, the people who has always been faithful to me, I will put them in a very special place. And then those people will be revered as the righteous, but those who are wicked, there will be a differentiation of the treatment that God gives those. So his answer was, yeah, the bad people might be looking like they're getting theirs now, but those who are faithful will be the ones who get the blessing in the end. And then Malachi finishes up in chapter 4. Remember the law of my servant Moses, the decrees and the laws I gave him at Horeb for all Israel. See, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. He will turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the hearts of the children to their parents, or else I will come and strike the land with total destruction. And verse 5, sending the prophet Elijah, is another reference to John the Baptist, who led the way for Jesus Christ. So Malachi's prophecies was for the Jews of that time, but he also wanted to tell them about what was yet to come, who was John the Baptist, to lead the way for Jesus Christ, who will be the tool to separate the righteous from the wicked, and he will give the righteous people their rightful treasures for the faith in obedience to their God. So that sums up the last 3 books of the minor prophets. Oh, and this is just a timeline. This is the final timeline that we saw with all of the historical books, starting from the book of Joshua, moving forward. You can see how they all interrelate to each other with this visual. And then I put the beginning here, where we move from Genesis to Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, in Deuteronomy before he moved to the book of Joshua. So this pretty much gives the entire timeline of the events and during the time frame and what books span the events of each period of time. Well, that pretty much concludes our lesson. Rosalind has her hand up. Yes, Rosalind.
I was hoping you'd explain to everyone, since you spent time on it, what happened to the temple of Zerubbabel.
Okay. Well, as we know, the first temple was built by King Solomon. And when Babylon conquered the southern kingdom, they destroyed the temple. Then, like we discussed, and you can find these events in the book of Ezra, Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, and Zechariah on the rebuilding of the second temple, which was to replace the first. And the destruction of the second temple, and I don't have the exact time in my head,
69,
but
I
I
believe
believe
69,
Rome,
70 AD.
yes, but thank you. As the Persians, the Greeks conquered the Persians, and then the Jews and the Greeks fought over time, and the Jews won sometimes, then the Greek won sometimes, but then the Roman Empire came and they wiped out everybody. Once they wiped them out, they took control from everyone. And then after Jesus Christ's birth and his death and resurrection, it was the king after Nero. It wasn't Nero, but it was Domitian, I believe, was the Roman king who finally destroyed the Jewish the temple, like Ross said, in 69 AD.
One step in between, Herod restored the temple to its splendor, Herod the Great, to win favor with the Jews. And that was before the birth of Jesus Christ. I forget the exact time. I think it was actually 70 years before he was born. But in addition to Zerubbabel rebuilding the temple, it was actually expanded and restored to the former glory that King Solomon had put in place.
Yes, the temple was built under Ezra's time, and the walls of Jerusalem was rebuilt under Nehemiah's time, and the whole kingdom, whole city of Jerusalem was rebuilt, and it was damaged over time. And the Romans said, "That's right, you here restored it to a certain point after some destruction, but the final fall, like Ross said, was in 69 AD.
I know you don't want this class to go any further, but tell them the best part. There'll be another temple.
Oh, why don't you tell us this? You know.
Well, prophets say there'll be a third temple. Then the temple will become through Jesus Christ. Some theologians say it'll be here on earth. Some say it'll be in heaven, but we know there'll be a third temple, and upon the building of the third temple, Jesus Christ will return in all of his glory, conquer sin, restore the earth for the meek, and send all of us to heaven. to be with him. So there'll be one more time.
Yes, and for those adventurous people, you can find it in the book of Revelation.
Thank you, Pastor.
Okay, Roz or Dad, any parting words before we sign off?
No, for me.
All right, well, everybody, thank you for
Well,
spending time.
did you have something you want to say, Dad?
I keep telling you, you learn by listening.
Yes, sir.
I
All
only
right.
talk what I know. And those little grape things, jelly things, fleas, bags. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, fruit snacks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I said a whole bag now, not one or two. You know what I'm talking about now?
I think so. We still online, Dad. We're live.
Oh, okay.
All right, everybody, we love you. We hope to see you in our events the rest of this week, and be blessed.